this cuts to the heart of another lie that the cannabis industry tells. This is not a plant anymore. I mean, this is just a chemical that people are ingesting, as you said, in every possible way. It's the only thing they don't do with it is shoot it, because basically it's not it gets complicated on the acid versus base, but you can't really inject it into your body. But every other way they'll use.
What I'm interested in on the weed front is twofold. For a while, and if you're in the comment sections, you have to admit this is true. We have pretended like weed is good. Period. Full stop. End of story. Like it's medicine. It's good. It's like the miracle drug. And come on, man. Like anything in life, that's absurd. Everything has an upside and a downside. Listen, if you think I'm being judgmental, I do 8 of these a day. This is nicotine. I'm addicted to it. I'm not proud of it. I get mad at myself, and I have done all the research to tell myself that it isn't bad, that all it does is cause a little bit of high blood pressure. But if I'm being honest with you, I know that my energy yo-yos all day long, and that's not good. And
you're using 8 tins a day?
Good.
That's a lot of nicotine.
I do. No, not tins, 8 pouches a day.
Oh, okay.
They are 8 milligrams. So I'm getting I'm somewhere probably between 60 and 80 milligrams a day of nicotine.
That's a lot of nicotine.
And I know it's not good, and I'm not trying to justify my habit. And that's what I'm doing with this weed thing as well. Just because you want to have a critical conversation and thought about it doesn't mean you need to be personally indicted. You should always have all the information. And so, Alex, I think you've written a lot about this, and the evidence is moving your way, Alex. The New York Times, I mean, it's always been there, but the popular recognition of the evidence is moving your way with the New York Times. So you've told us about this. Tell us the risks. Like, what are the risks to me if I take up everyday cannabis usage? At what level and to what risk?
Well, okay. So again, if you're literally somebody who's doing this and you're having one joint a day, and not a huge joint, or you're having one gummy, 5 milligrams THC before bed, I'm not going to claim your risks are super high. They're not. Just as with alcohol, frankly, if you were smoking 1 or 2 cigarettes a day, okay, it's not great for you, but it's not likely to kill you. Okay. So here's the problem, right? Cannabis, some people don't like the high at all, but some people really like the high, particularly if they've started using when they're relatively young, and they use a lot. Okay. And so once you get out of that, the equivalent of the 1 or 2 drink a day paradigm, you have a real risk if you're using, certainly when you're as a teenager, of developing a permanent psychotic disorder. Now, that's the worst thing I think that can happen to basically anybody in life. All right. It is devastating for the person. It's devastating for your family. I'm not saying that there's a 50% risk or a 10% risk of that happening, but you are probably tripling, possibly even quadrupling or quintupling your risk. It might go from, a 0.5% at baseline to 3%, a 1% to 5%. These numbers sound small, but the consequences are devastating. Okay, so psychosis.
Well, okay,
there's definitely a risk.
Real quick, on the consequence front, put some flesh on psychotic risks.
Okay,
what are you talking about? Bipolar disorder, depression, schizophrenia?
I'm talking about schizophrenia and bipolar and severe bipolar disorder. Okay, these are conditions. If you are schizophrenic, or if you have bipolar 1, real bipolar disorder, where you have manic episodes where you cannot sleep for weeks, and then you cycle down into suicidal depression, you're gonna have a very hard time working. You are probably not going to get married. You're probably not going to have kids. You're going to spend your life cycling in and out of psychiatric institutions and group homes until either somehow your illness burns out, which does happen for some people, or you die at your own hand, or you die as a result of the sort of metabolic consequences of the drugs that you have to take to manage this, meaning you get diabetic, you have a heart attack. People with schizophrenia have terrible life outcomes. It is a disease. I would not wish on
time out. I thought you said bipolar 1.
Bipolar 1 also.
The same as what we used to call schizophrenia?
It's the same. Yeah, bipolar 1 is the same. Essentially, Bipolar 1, you're cycling in and out of psychosis too, because ultimately those people will go weeks or months without sleeping. And they actually have an even higher rate of suicide because they're depressed. You know, you're bipolar. When you're manic, you think everything is great. You're awesome. You can fly. The world is yours. Then you cycle into really, really severe depression. Those people kill themselves at a stunningly high rate. And by the way, again, they also can have, they act out sexually, they gamble, they ruin their lives. People with bipolar mania. You know, Kanye West, he is bipolar, and you see how, you know, he's really destroyed his life. Okay, his acting out.
I have personal experience. I have personal experience with this. Okay, and I can tell you, this is just anecdote, that usage of drugs, and in this case, nicotine as well, but certainly marijuana, according to the doctors, exacerbates what you're talking about. Like it makes it really hard to avoid the death spiral. I don't mean literal death, the loop, the spiral down into the mania and depression.
Yep. So okay, so that's the worst outcome. But let's acknowledge that most people who use, even most people who use heavily, that's not the most common outcome. Okay, so what are risks? Well, there's now really good evidence, and this surprised me too, that cannabis can cause heart attacks and strokes. It messes with your blood pressure. It messes with your, and this is not because of the smoking. The smoking is a separate issue. This is what THC does. It messes with the vasculature of your arteries, and so like you actually have a higher risk of coronary events, which people don't know. Cannabis is bad for driving. There's this funny notion that, and maybe this was true when people were only smoking a little and it was sort of low potency, that cannabis users just drive very slowly. They're stopping. They're not paying attention. Weirdly, people who get, and maybe I would guess it's probably related to the psychosis and the paranoia that cannabis can cause at high doses. I can point to, and I'm not exaggerating, dozens of cases where people have had fatal accidents driving more than 100 miles an hour, and cannabis was the drug, not alcohol. So cannabis is bad for driving. Then there's this scromiting, this cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. That's a physical thing. And I would bet that even some of the people who are, you know, posting on YouTube or X have seen that for themselves. Maybe they've lived it. You start to vomit uncontrollably. This is a really powerful drug. And then let's go to one more thing, okay? And again, I think even people who would disagree with me or say that I'm exaggerating all this other stuff wouldn't disagree about this. Cannabis ruins motivation for a lot of people. It makes them apathetic. It messes with their memory. And I know multiple people, Will, and I'll bet you do too, who went to college, they started to use pretty heavily, and now it's 10 or 20 or 30 years later even, and their lives are sort of stuck. They never got married. They worked and then they stopped working. Maybe they work again, but really their lives are built around cannabis and THC in a way that if it were any other drug, you know, someone would come to them and say, you have a really, really big problem here. You need to start living. And they don't. And somehow we've allowed this with cannabis in a way that we don't with other drugs.